Halloween had always been my favorite time of the year. The crisp autumn air, the leaves rustling in the breeze, the eerie decorations adorning every house in the neighborhood, it all added up to a perfect blend of excitement and fear. But this year, something was different. This year, Halloween brought a terror I could never have imagined. It all began on the night of October 31st when the sun dipped below the horizon and the full moon cast an eerie glow over the town. I had spent the entire day preparing for the evening, carving pumpkins, decorating my house, and choosing the perfect costume. This year, I had decided to go as a classic horror movie character, a mummy. I had wrapped myself in strips of old bed sheets and smeared them with fake blood, making sure to leave just enough space to see and breathe. As the night descended, I could hear the excited laughter of children and the distant howling of the wind. I eagerly donned my mummy costume and made my way to the front door. The anticipation of the night scares and sweet treats was almost intoxicating. The first group of trick-or-treaters arrived at my door, and I handed out candy with a grin. The kids were dressed in all sorts of costumes, witches, vampires, and even a little zombie. It was a typical Halloween evening, and I relished in the joy of it all. But as the night wore on, something began to feel off. I noticed a chill in the air that went beyond the usual autumn cold. The wind carried a haunting whisper that sent shivers down my spine. I dismissed it as my imagination playing tricks on me, but the feeling of unease lingered. As the hours passed, fewer and fewer children came to my door. It was as if the streets had emptied and the once festive atmosphere had turned into a desolate silence. I couldn't help but peek out my window to see if any trick-or-treaters were still around. To my horror, I saw a group of children standing in the dimly lit street, their eyes fixated on my house. They were not like the other kids who had visited earlier. Their costumes were tattered and old, as if they had been pulled from the depths of a forgotten attic. They didn't carry candy bags or flash excited smiles. Instead, their faces were expressionless and blank. I felt a wave of dread wash over me as I watched them. My heart pounded in my chest and I couldn't tear my gaze away from those eerie figures. Then, one of the children stepped forward, slowly raising a bony hand to point at me. It was then that I realized they weren't just kids in costumes, they were something else entirely. In a state of panic, I turned away from the window and paced the room. I needed to call the police or find a way to escape, but when I tried to use my phone, I found it was dead. The lights in the house flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The air grew colder, and the unsettling whispers from outside grew louder. I couldn't stay in the house any longer. With trembling hands, I decided to make a run for it. As I opened the front door, the children were standing on my porch, their lifeless eyes staring directly at me. They moved with an unnatural, synchronized rhythm, and it sent a chill down my spine. I stepped outside, and the night seemed to stretch into an endless void. The moon had become impossibly large, casting a pale and ghastly light on everything. The children surrounded me, their cold fingers touching my arms and face. It was as if they were draining the warmth from my body, and I could feel myself growing weaker with each passing moment. Desperation overcame me, and I screamed for help, but my voice seemed to vanish into the void around me. The children's grip tightened, and I could see their mouths moving, whispering words that were both inaudible and incomprehensible. Suddenly, the world around me shifted, and I found myself in a nightmarish landscape. The sky was a swirling mass of dark clouds, and the ground was covered in a thick black fog. The children were gone, but the terror remained. I was alone in a nightmarish hellscape. As I stumbled through the surreal nightmare, I heard faint laughter in the distance, a sound that sent shivers down my spine. It was the laughter of children, but it was cold and empty, devoid of any joy or innocence. I had no idea how I had ended up in this nightmarish world, but I knew I had to find a way out. As I walked through the dark landscape, I couldn't shake the feeling that Halloween had taken on a new, terrifying meaning, one that I would never forget. Halloween had always been my favorite time of the year, but on that fateful night, it became a nightmare I could never escape. On the night of Halloween, a sinister tale whispered through the autumn breeze had piqued my curiosity. It was a legend that had shrouded the small town of Ravenswood for decades, The story told of a mysterious Halloween carnival that appeared only once every century, and it was said to be a cursed event where unimaginable horrors unfolded under the harvest moon. I was drawn to the legend like a moth to a flame, my sense of adventure overpowering any rational fear. The carnival was rumored to materialize in the darkest corner of Ravenswood's old forest, a place that no sane person would dare venture into. Yet, I found myself standing at the edge of the woods, my heart pounding with anticipation. The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie silver glow on the gnarled trees. As I ventured deeper into the forest, a strange melody filled the air, haunting and melodic, as if the very trees were singing. Dim lights flickered ahead like fireflies in the dark, drawing me further into the heart of the woods. The closer I got, the more the carnival's apparition took shape. The carnival grounds appeared suddenly, as if conjured by an otherworldly hand. Tattered tents of crimson and ebony stretched as far as the eye could see, and each was adorned with eerie symbols and flickering candles. The air was heavy with the scent of autumn leaves, and a chill ran down my spine as I realized I was the only living soul in attendance. I wandered through the ghostly carnival, its attractions cloaked in eerie shadows. The games of chance were nightmarish, with grotesque prizes that no one would dare to win. The rides creaked and groaned as if they were alive, and I couldn't help but wonder if I had stumbled into a cursed realm. In the heart of the carnival, a sinister circus tent stood. Its entrance beckoned me with a foreboding sense of intrigue. As I ventured inside, I found myself in a nightmarish ringmaster's lair. He was a tall figure dressed in tattered red and black, his face hidden beneath a macabre mask adorned with sharp, twisted horns. The ringmaster raised a bony hand, and the crowd of spectral carnival goers fell into a hushed silence. He introduced himself as the Keeper of Nightmares and beckoned me forward, promising that I could partake in the carnival's most extraordinary act. With trepidation, I followed the ringmaster to the center of the tent, where an ornate mirror stood. He explained that this mirror could reveal one's deepest fears and nightmares, forcing them to confront the darkest corners of their soul. My reflection in the mirror began to warp and change, revealing my deepest fears, regrets, and anxieties. The horrors from my past and the monsters from my own mind tormented me. I was overwhelmed by the surreal and nightmarish visions that danced before me. The ringmaster's voice echoed in my head as he whispered dark truths. I realized that the carnival's curse was to strip away the illusions that sheltered us from our darkest selves, laying bare the terrors that we kept hidden. In that moment of revelation, I understood that I had willingly walked into a carnival of horrors, facing my deepest fears head-on. It was a nightmarish crucible, forcing me to confront the demons that lurked in the darkest corners of my soul. With a surge of determination, I shattered the mirror, and the carnival grounds began to fade into mist. The Keeper of Nightmares laughed, his voice filled with satisfaction, and he vanished into the shadows. I stumbled back into the forest, disoriented and shaken, as the carnival disappeared, leaving no trace of its malevolent presence. As I made my way back to town, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of relief and dread. The legend of the Halloween Carnival was all too real, a curse that haunted the very fabric of Ravenswood. It was a place where one's deepest fears could be seen, a chilling reminder that sometimes the darkness within us is the most terrifying of all. The legend would persist, and I had become a part of it, forever bound to the cursed carnival that appeared once a century on Halloween night. Halloween had always been my favorite holiday. I loved everything about it, the crisp autumn air, the colorful leaves, and of course the thrill of dressing up and going trick-or-treating. But this year something was different. As I approached my 12th Halloween, I started to feel like I was getting too old for the childish costumes and the door-to-door candy hunts. My friends had all outgrown the tradition, and I was left feeling like I was stuck in a time warp. My excitement for the holiday waned, and I decided not to dress up that year. On the night of Halloween, I decided to stay in and watch scary movies while my parents handed out candy to the neighborhood kids. The house was dimly lit, with the glow of a flickering jack-o'-lantern providing the only source of light in the living room. I settled in with a bowl of popcorn and pressed play on my favorite horror film. The movie was a classic, full of jump scares and creepy atmospheric music. It wasn't long before I was fully immersed in the world of the film, the rest of the world fading into the background. But as the movie reached its climax, I heard a sound that made my heart skip a beat. From the corner of the room, I heard the creaking of an old door. I muted the TV and strained my ears to listen. The noise was coming from the hallway, near my parents' bedroom. I told myself it was probably just the house settling, but something about it felt off. As I got up to investigate, I noticed that the old wardrobe at the end of the hallway was slightly ajar. I had never really paid it much attention before. It had always been there, a piece of furniture that had been in the family for generations. I approached it cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. I pushed the door open slowly and was met with a musty smell and a rush of cold air. Inside the wardrobe, I found an array of old, tattered clothes. Most of them looked like they were from a different era, vintage suits, dresses, and coats. It was as if the wardrobe held a forgotten collection of clothing from the past. My curiosity got the better of me, and I reached in to touch one of the garments. As soon as my fingers made contact with the fabric, I felt a sudden chill run down my spine. The clothing felt ice cold, as if it had been stored in a freezer for years. I pulled my hand away and quickly closed the wardrobe door, deciding to forget about the strange discovery. I returned to the living room and continued watching my movie, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about that old wardrobe. Hours passed, and it was well past midnight when I finally decided to go to bed. As I lay in my darkened room, I couldn't stop thinking about the wardrobe. My imagination ran wild, conjuring up all sorts of eerie stories about its origins and the people who had once worn those clothes. Just as I was about to drift off to sleep, I heard it again, the faint creaking of the wardrobe door. I held my breath, paralyzed with fear. The noise grew louder, as if someone or something was trying to force its way out. I couldn't take it anymore. I mustered the courage to turn on the bedroom light and rushed back to the living room. The wardrobe door was wide open, and the room was filled with that same icy chill. The vintage clothes hung lifeless, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was hiding within them. I slammed the wardrobe door shut and locked it, vowing never to open it again. I couldn't explain what had happened, but I knew I had stumbled upon something beyond my understanding. That Halloween night, I learned that sometimes the past has a way of creeping into the present, and the line between reality and the supernatural can blur in the most unexpected of places. The next day, I insisted that we get rid of the wardrobe. My parents were reluctant, but they agreed to donate it to a local thrift store. As the wardrobe was carried away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. I never found out the true nature of the old wardrobe or the secrets it held, and I was content with leaving it in the past. But one thing was certain. I had experienced a Halloween unlike any other, and it was a reminder that the mysteries of the holiday could be found in the most unexpected of places.